Let's talk about the issue on war on graft, and one of the, it's also in the front page of the Standard. Public servants paid for close to a year to idle at home. About 400 procurement, accounting and finance officers were sent home to pave way for lifestyle audit as directed by President Uhuru Kenyatta. A year later, they still earn their salaries, not knowing whether they have been fired or when they will even resume duties. This is also an issue that the head of state touched on during the Madaraka Day speeches. And let's do a post-mortem of that and I'll start with you, Honorable Moses. You must have watched the Madaraka speech by the president. What did you make of it in regards to the war on graft and also what we're seeing now?
I think three very important things came out from the president's speech. Yeah. The first one, of course, is the war on graft. But particularly, why this issue of the currency is very exciting for me is because I've always argued that we are fighting corruption using the wrong mechanisms, where we go for personalized approach as opposed to systemic and process-based. If you cannot change the people, change the system. And that's what this currency thing is doing. It's going to have far more impact than all the other drama that we've been having with Kamata Fridays and all that over the 1 year. And I think the results in terms of the war on graft will start percolating almost immediately. I think that was the most important step that the president has taken in this war against corruption. The second one is on the issue of importers. You had this declaration that we now will not have any more double inspection. We are having inspection at the country of origin and then another inspection here. The second inspection here was nothing but a conduit for corruption by guys in KRA and in KEBS who wanted to say that now they have valued this phone at X and it was valued at Y. How can we know more than the country that is exporting to us? So I think that this again will have a fundamental impact in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of trade, and in terms of course, our small importers who are suffering. And thirdly and finally is on the issue of prompt payments. Nothing could be sweeter for me. I've moved recently the bill on prompt payments to ensure that we put some timelines, 90 days timelines on people who do business with both national and county governments. And what the president did is to instruct or direct that the current stock of pending bills be cleared by 30th of June. And this is very important. I'm a member of the budget committee and we're just heading to a meeting with the CS for Treasury to see where we're going to get money from. I know this will have an impact on things like deficit and all that, but the guy to suffer cannot be the small guy who has applied, pens to some ministry or to some county. What I don't know is that we are going to clear this problem within the national government, but I don't know how we are going to get our counties. Money will get from for national government. Take that to the bank. But the 180 billion that counties owe to suppliers and contractors, and they are saying that this is money that was owed by the previous governors. So I think that's catch-22, but pay we must pay.
All right, Honorable Tiende, there were really no declarations on the war on graft. The president just said that his silence means he has faith in the institutions that have been mandated to fight graft. Was that enough?
Well, I think we all agree that we need to do much more on the question of graft in this country. I think the president has spoken about it a lot of times. Even if he spoke about it, it wouldn't change a thing. I think what we need is more action. I personally am not persuaded that the drama that sometimes EACC and DCI and the DPP bring around corruption is legitimate. I think that the way to fight graft is to meaningfully fight graft. The idea of sharing, who you are going to arresting them on a Friday, that does not help you fight graft, because prosecution is a science. You must do the investigation. It doesn't mean that if you treat somebody with decorum, that you will not therefore have them convicted. In fact, it serves even better, because the court that is listening to you will see that you are not being malicious. You are being factual and legal. So I don't agree with that. But I think that, and I agree, that the idea of having the new notes is one way that will help us fight graft, for the reasons we've already shared. Let me answer the question that I was asked. Why did we take 9 years? As I indicated, it is 9 years too late. We should have done this in 2010. In fact, the Constitution expected us to do it almost immediately. And the truth is, for the last 9 years, we have been operating illegal tender. I've said this before, that if you take any notes, even right now the notes that we have, and I dare you to check any notes that you have, including the new, any note that you will see to be new, you will see that it's shown as having been printed on 16th July 2010. So what we have been doing is that we've been printing notes and predating it in order not to appear to offend the Constitution, and that's completely wrong. But now that we have finally come to do what we need to do, it should be important that we get it right. So it's not, and then to answer the question again which my brother Sifuna has answered, the handshake is about the future of this country. The handshake is not about offending the Constitution and keeping quiet about it. Article 231(3) of the Constitution makes CBK independent and cannot take direction from anyone, not from the president, not from the ODM leader, not from us.
Okay.
And therefore, when they act independently, but they get it wrong, it is our obligation to point it out.
Right.
Let me come back to the question of the speeches and the speech of the president, two particular things. One is about the procurement officers, and that's what you started with.
Yes.
When this directive was issued, I personally faulted it. I thought that it is wrong to demonize a position, that all procurement officers and chief financing officers are all assumed to be guilty and therefore are sent home collectively. I thought that was wrong. But what is even worse is that I think it has had the contrary effect. Yeah. I sit in the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. Times without number, the entities come and they say we are unable to answer this particular query because the procurement officer or the chief finance officer is suspended.
Yeah.
And so we can't get this. So when the person who should be held accountable is suspended and you cannot therefore hold the entity accountable, that does the contrary to what it was supposed to do. I, however, laud the president in terms of the pending bills, because that's another source of corruption. The reason why a lot of bills are pending oft times is because the public officers who should facilitate the payment want to make sure that they get some money from that money that they're supposed to pay.
Yeah.
And that is completely wrong. There is absolutely no reason why once goods and services are procured, why the bill should be pending. Because before you procure it, it must have been budgeted. And before you budget and instruct it, you must be sure that you have the money. So the idea of saying that there are so many pending bills because we don't have the money is in itself an admission of impropriety. And therefore I completely agree with the president. But that is not to say that even those bills that were not legitimately incurred should be paid. Those which were not legitimately incurred, they should state that we will not pay it either because the service was not rendered or for whatever direct impropriety, but all other pending bills should be paid.
All right, Honorable Kastan.
Yes, I admire Honorable Otiende Amolo's love for details. I have not I didn't know that the printing of the money and the dating was pre-2010, and I think that is a good observation. But I think on the issue of corruption, the president has made it clear, and I want to say I fully agree with what Otiende Amolo has said, and that is what we were saying, though we were branded as looking as if we were defending people who are corrupt. But the issue of corruption should not be noisy.
Yeah.
It should only be messy. It should not be noisy, it should not be loud. We should just hear, Moses Kuria amepelekwa, Caleb ndio amewekwa ndani, Sifuna is there, and we should not have drama. Like I want to agree with governors, the drama that was there at Waitito's home, first of all, give somebody the opportunity to disobey the law. Give him a warrant, tell him we're coming to such a home. When he resists, then go with the force that you require, because he has failed to comply with the first step of the law. So that we stop this issue of, there's a presumption of innocence until proven guilty.
But that is not the same privilege accorded to the common mwananchi.
That is what I'm saying. It should go across. It should go across the board. Yeah. Even the common mwananchi is not arrested by 10 or 20 cops like you
actually,
saw in India.
The common mwananchi is just bangled.
It's just bangled. You never even see it. It never appears in the media. Even new media never pay attention to the small lady. So I think that is one thing. But what I want to laud the president about is the issue of pending bills. And I want to first say that pending bills should not be an issue if our treasury would release money on time.
Okay.
The biggest issue we have now is we budget, then we have released money is released piecemeal. It's like a tablet, you take 3 times a day. Honorable members here receive CDF.
Yeah.
I would tell you that up to now, we are meant to receive 109 million in this financial year. We have a month to go. I think we are at 50 million.
Yes.
So we have a balance of
more
about
than
59
half.
million,
Yeah.
and we have 1 month to go, which is money we've already allocated to projects in the constituency. I think that same comes into government.
Okay.
The same spillover goes into county governments. So I think this issue, first, Treasury needs to get their act properly.
Okay.
They need to come up with a budgeting process, because they have estimations of what their collections will be.
Okay.
So they need to balance that, and especially disbursement
right.
of money should come at the right time so that
Okay.
we
I'll come to
get
you,
away.
Sifuna, then come to Moses.
Yes, very quickly, I want to agree with what my senior said about the razzmatazz that surrounds this war on corruption. We have said repeatedly that really, for us, our expectation of the office of a DPP is to be calling a press conferences to announce the number of convictions that they have actually been able to secure, as opposed to these arrests, which I personally believe are only meant to satiate public anger, because even as a public, as a Kenyan public, and even as media, all we want to see, for us to be able to feel good about ourselves, is for the people who are called honorable being bungled into a matatu and being taken to court. And you will see that on the day of the arraignment, and Honorable Otiende can bear me witness, because we practice in the same courts. On the day of the arraignment, Citizen TV will send 5 media crew, but on the day when the evidence is actually being taken, so that you can be able to weigh the work that the ODPP has done and the investigators have done, you'll hardly see a news reporter in the room, so that we need to expose all these things that are happening. And on the president's speech, I was happy when he said that we need to have a culture where we praise the work that results in the wealth, not just celebrating wealth and telling us that you've been hustling all your life, but you cannot explain to us how this hustling has resulted in the wealth that you have. We tend to gloss over. Like somebody will tell you how they began, and then they tell you 20 years later, I'm now a millionaire, without explaining those 19 years. I also look forward to him delivering the number of housing units that he promised. If indeed he can deliver, did he say 500,000 housing units by the time of Madaraka Day in 2022? That would be a nice thing to do. To see.
ODM leader did not speak. Did you have an issue with that?
We didn't have an issue with that at all. And those who are in the stadium know that the people of Narok spoke on his behalf. I was making the point on the issue of the housing before you interrupted me. We would like to see that delivered. The president spoke about the growing issue of unemployment. He himself will know that they promised Kenyan youth 1 million jobs a year. The economy has not been performing in a manner that would provide those jobs. In our offices at Orange House, we receive about 100 CVs every day of people looking for jobs, young people looking for jobs, which is why we were a bit upset that there is a gentleman who is keen on delivering jobs for just one person in this country and who has not asked for that job, which is why we said we want these young people to bring all their CVs to his office so that he can look for jobs for them, because that is what he promised to do.
We will talk about what act ODM in just a bit, but Honorable Kuria, I want to comment on this.
First of all, if the party leader of ODM would have spoken, I would have demanded to speak as well. So that could be one of the reasons that he didn't speak, just to have some food. I could see Musalia Mudavadi was also there. So it could have opened a Pandora's box in terms of how many party leaders would have spoken that event. But let me speak about this issue of the public servants who have been at home. I think this is really symptomatic of how we run this government. When the president says something, it is news. Actually, this country is run by 2 people only, the president and the media. When the media highlights, it becomes an issue. After that, it's business as usual. When the president says something, it's big news. After that, we go to snooze mode. Because when these people are suspended, I don't agree with the suspension, as Honorable Sedomolo is saying. But after that, somebody should have followed up. But we have a very dysfunctional government. We have a very inefficient government where people see only what the president can see. People do only what the president can inspect. Look at the issue of importers. It took the president to go to ICD I've been talking about CS Peter Munya because I believe that is a guy who have been entrusted by the president to do exactly what the president did. But for them, if the president is not on a certain issue, it is not there. Actually, let me say something. Like, 3/4 of this cabinet, I will not employ them in my Mandazi kiosk. That's how
3/4.
Yeah, 3/4. Because
so isn't that an indictment
how
on the head of state? Because he's the one who appointed them.
He
But
means
you're saying
well.
he's incompetent.
He means well, but he needs to check on his HR department, because when you have people like things like this, well, they are not a guy who would have said, wait a minute, 1 year is too much, and we bastardized the old system where we had the president and the prime minister, and those are the things that the prime minister will use to coordinate, that things that the president is very busy to do, then there's somebody else to to follow up on. I think that's
so you think that would have been a better system?
Maybe I find this system sometimes it is what we call everybody's job becomes nobody's job, because it is everybody's job. There's no ownership. There's no, and with due respect to my good friend Mr. Kinyua, head of Mudavara was different. Yeah. Mudavara would actually take a notebook and note all those issues and follow up on them, and we used to have better follow up in that. I have got a huge problem in the way we follow up things in this government.
When the people you lead are incompetent, like you say, is it that an indictment on the leader himself?
No, it is not necessarily, but you see, the cabinet is a big deal. The cabinet is an elephant, my friend. I know that as the next president. I know, it's something you have to grapple with. That, tunasema hii basi imebeba kila mtu, mpaka pickpockets and everything. But I think that people in cabinet need to look at themselves in the mirror and ask, are you doing the best that you can to help the guy who gave you the job? Now, let me come to the issue of corruption. And I would say this because Honorable Theodore Moro is here. On the issue of counties, for example, I'm faulting, and I was not part of that process, but Theodore Moro was higher than me in the pecking order when we were doing the new constitution. He was in the committee. When we assumed that county governments have got the same standing as national government, I think we missed a point. Because today, if you look at the way corruption is happening within counties, actually I say in the other arms of government, people steal in the course of work. Within our counties, people work in the course of stealing. The main business is stealing. And then, the fact is because, you have to work within that. And I think as we talk about looking at this constitution, we have to ask ourselves, really, is this really what we intended? Did we intend just to create 47 billionaires, just like that?
So you think this entire constitution should be reviewed in your...
At least counties need to be managed the way we manage CDF. If money comes for a certain school, it's for a certain school.
Okay.
When we're sending money from national government, it's give me the project, give me the documents, give me the everything. What we do, everything should be a conditional grant.
Okay.
Not giving governors, governors have more power than the president.
Okay. Otiende, I have to take a quick break, but you're part of the drafters of this constitution. Was it well thought through? Is it time we review it?
I can tell you, our problem is not the constitution. Because it is true that there's a lot of corruption in the counties. But even if you put the counties aside, start looking at the state corporation. Tell me which state corporation has not had some financial scandal. If you start looking at the ministries, indeed, even our own CDF, as my colleague Moses Kuria says, it is true that even in the CDF there are issues. The Auditor General raises issues with our own CDF all the time. Our problem is deeper than the institutions we created. And therefore, we need to solve that problem, whether it is in the counties, whether it's in the CDF, whether it's in the national government, and everywhere else that it is. Now, my brother Moses Kuria faults a lot of things that are going on in government, but I hope he remembers that the president is actually his constituent, and that therefore he is in a better position than many of us.
They should discuss this at the constitution.
To discuss and remedy some of these things more than the rest of us.
My oversight role. Do you want to have a constitution only for me as member of parliament for Gatundu South?
No,
and not have the same constitutional responsibilities as a people of Rarieda would.
Okay, let him finish. So who should be held responsible?
So, well, of course, the ultimate responsibility always lies with the president. But I think we have a problem. We have a country where the president was elected with a deputy who does not seem to agree with him. He's actually a president without a deputy, and that is the fact. But you also have, we are in the capital city, which is Nairobi. We have a rogue governor who does not even think that he should have a deputy, you know, and who calls himself the commander-in-chief of Nairobi County. I don't know what that means. So we have a governance problems also. So to that extent, I agree with Moses. But the solution, the irony of all this is, the very Kenyans who blame a lot of us on many things are the very Kenyans who will only elect those kinds of leaders. They will not elect you if you don't have money. They blame you for not giving money, and they fault you for having that money, but they won't elect you on the basis of integrity only. So we have we need to introspect ourselves also as Kenyans. Yeah. When you see some of the things that are happening, when you saw what the governor did, humiliating the women rep, and the very Kenyans were there, they were cheering, then you ask yourself, what are our value systems? You know, it means we only have the kind of leadership that we deserve.
Honorable Kositan, very interesting perspective there from Honorable Tieni. He says the president is a president without a deputy. Is that true?
The president, which president?
The one currently have.
Well, he has a deputy, and I don't think...
But does he stand with him? Does the deputy stand with him?
The government is working. I don't see any reason why we should say we don't have a deputy. Unless maybe after the handshake they are trying to find a position for themselves. But on Trevor, on this issue of the 400 procurement officers, the other day I went for a funeral in my constituency, and one of the relatives was a procurement officer at a certain parastatal. And he actually came up to me and said, Mheshimiwa, we were sent packing. I am receiving my salary, I have no problem, but I'm having a problem receiving a salary and I'm not working. And this is a young man in his below 40. Yeah. And he gave me a list of all his colleagues who are about the same age who are at home. Okay. Nobody has told them you are sacked. Nobody has told them you have a case, but they're earning, and it is disturbing them.
Has the lifestyle not even been conducted?
Yes, it is disturbing them that they are at home, receiving salaries and doing nothing. They are actually bothered. They want to know their fate. If they have been sacked, let them be sacked, and then they can find ways. And I think the way we have agreed, all of us have agreed, that the fight against corruption, we mention something, we target a certain area, and then once that is done, it is off the hook and we have forgotten. Somebody somewhere has forgotten that there are 400 people who are being vetted and have not been cleared. And somebody, when you ask, the ministry, the parent ministry says, we have not received the clearance from EACC. And EACC says, hiyo maneno tulimaliza. So everybody is running up and down.
We have to take